So good morning, one and all. I have the pleasure today of introducing our next plenary speaker. And obviously, we all know that he needs absolutely no introduction. Professor Raymond Gibbs Jr. Right? He has a distinction, as he was telling me, of having been to every single RaAM conference since its inception over 2 decades ago. So that alone is something very respectful and worth celebrating. And of course, when we invited him to Hong Kong, he wasted no time in saying yes and agreeing to come. So thank you, Professor, for that. So yesterday, I remember Professor Su was introduced as the mother of metaphor in Taiwan. And I'm sure you all agree with me that if we would apply the same metaphor, familial metaphor, to Professor Raymond Gibbs, there's no exaggeration that in many ways he's a very fatherly figure in metaphor studies as well as in the RaAM Association. Professor Raymond Gibbs recently retired as a distinguished professor of psychology at the University of California, Santa Cruz. He is a cognitive scientist and a towering figure, both literally and metaphorically. He has a PhD in psychology and psycholinguistics from the UC San Diego in 1980. And ever since then, he's been making numerous contributions to the field of metaphor research. His research interests, even as he recently retired, he continues to pursue them, and it includes an impressive list, including experimental psycholinguistics, cognitive science, the use and understanding of figurative language such as metaphor, irony, and idioms, and the role of embodied experience in language and thought. And he's also the chief editor of a very influential journal in our field, Metaphor and Symbol. Raymond is an inspiration, I'm sure, for a lot of us, and for me as well, being a pioneering figure in conceptual metaphor theory, as well as being particularly influential in advocating empirical verification of many of its early claims through experimentation. And I remember one of his early publications that inspired me to start thinking about metaphor as a serious research topic was in 1999. I'm sure some of us will remember this paper, taking metaphor out of our heads and putting it in the social world. And that very influential chapter got me thinking about how metaphor is not just a cognitive artifact, but something we can apply to many of the social contexts that we are interested in today. So today, the title of this talk is equally intriguing and inspiring. If you haven't heard it, it's called A Little Taste of Heaven, Metaphor and Bodily Experience. So with that, without further ado, please welcome Professor Raymond Gibbs.
Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me now?
Great, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure to be here and to talk to you today about A Little Taste of Heaven, Metaphor and Bodily Experience. And I want to start with the experience of sitting. You're sitting in front of me here, and the question I have for you is, are you doing anything metaphorically while you're sitting? Is sitting, in some cases, ever a metaphorical kind of action? I want to give you an example as to why I think that might be a possibility by telling you a story about this woman. This is a woman named Marina Abramovich. She is a Serbian-born performance artist who, over the last 40 years, has put on these amazing acts of physical endurance in a variety of different kinds of performance pieces. And the one I want to tell you about was one where several years ago at the New York Museum of Modern Art, every day, 5 days a week, for 7 hours a day, she sat in the chair and did not move. And people who were visitors to the museum could come in, line up, and then they take turns sitting across from her and just look at her. They weren't allowed to say anything, they weren't allowed to move, they could just sit there and look into each other's eyes, sitting. Over the course of 10 weeks or so, she sat for 736 hours. And there were 1,576 people who came and sat in front of her. Some came and sat for a few minutes. One woman came and sat for 6 hours. One guy came back and sat on 21 different occasions And he got a tattoo on his arm for each one of the times he was present with the artist. I was interested in this, and so one of the things I was saying, what kinds of reactions did people have for being sitting or being present with the artist? And they did photographs of each of the people who sat. And one of the things that was interesting that quite a few of them had these intense emotional reactions, like they cried, just sitting there looking at and being present with the artist Marina. And so I explored further, what kinds of things did people say about their experiences of sitting? Here are a few things. So one sitter said, at certain times I thought we were really in sync, other times I didn't. Other times I was totally hallucinating. She looked like a childhood friend I once had. Then she looked like a baby. I thought time was flying by, then time stopped. I lost track of everything, no hunger, no itching, no pain. I couldn't feel my hands. So they had a lot of things going on during their experience of sitting with the artist. Another person said she looked up. I start with the obvious question about whether this is art and why. I think the common saying that art only becomes art through the eyes of the viewer never is this more true than the self-portrait by Marina Bondage. Well, not surprisingly, I was interested in metaphor. Do these people say anything metaphorically about what it's like to sit there and be present with the artist? And some did. So one sitter wrote, she's a blank slate, a giant canvas of projections onto which the audience can assign their own meanings to her work. And then there was this one guy who I found, he's a blogger, lives in New York City, and he's called The Unknown Hipster. He goes to different cultural events in New York City, and he writes about them in this blog. And so he wrote about what it was like to go sit with Marina. And this is a picture of what he drew of the experience. That's the way Marina typically looked. He somehow decided that he looked like that as well when he sat with her. And so what did he say? He said, I did my best to sit in front of the artist with the appropriate seriousness, but when she lifted up her eyes, Marina didn't seem particularly enthusiastic. I felt like a forgotten lump of clay on a sculpture stand, half dry and not very enticing, so that after a little consideration, the artist finally decided not to use it. I felt like another mile in the endless journey of a truck driver. All of this metaphor just sitting there. So I felt like a forgotten lump of clay on a sculpture stand, half dry, not very enticing. I felt like another mile in the endless journey of a truck driver. Again, just sitting here, having this kind of metaphorical experience of being present with the artist. And to show that metaphor is multimodal, the unknown hipster drew some pictures of what his experience was like. So this is how it started, and then it went like this, and it went like this, and then it ended up like this. And so he was like blown away. He was bowled over. He was definitely felt like he was ignored and abandoned. So the reason why I give you this example is that bodily experiences like sitting always occur in some context. Everything in terms of our bodily experiences are always situated in some way. And because they're contextualized, because they're situated, symbolic meaning comes through and informs that bodily experience. And metaphor is a big part of that. So my argument that I'm going to make today is that a lot of the ways that we experience our bodies are indeed informed by metaphor. And I think this possibility has implications, significant implications actually, for how we think about metaphor and metaphor theory. We typically think of metaphor as, in some cases, mapping a non-metaphorical bodily source domain projected onto a target domain, and the metaphoricity arises from that mapping. The argument I'm going to make is that the bodily source domains are often themselves inherently metaphorical. If that's true, I think that has some implications for how we think about what metaphor is. So I want to begin by telling you about my own sort of thought process about this over the last 30 so years, because I've been thinking about this for a long time, but just now finally trying to put this all together. And many years ago, back in the 1980s, I did this work on idiomatic expressions in English. And one of the things I found was that there are a certain set of idioms which I call isomorphic forms. Things like go out on a limb, skate on the ice, rock the boat, spill the beans, get away with murder. And what's interesting about these is that when you think of these in their most literal form, like when you go out on a limb and when you're skating on thin ice, you are also doing the metaphorical thing. You're in danger. You're in a precarious kind of situation. When you rock the boat and the boat is going like this, you're also putting yourself in an uncertain, precarious situation. When you literally get away with murder, you metaphorically get away with murder as well. So the literal experiences that they're referring to here immediately evokes metaphorical meaning and metaphorical thoughts. All the work I did later on was on proverbs, such as don't count your chickens before they're hatched, the early bird catches the worm, don't let the cat out of the bag, strike while the iron is hot. And here too, when you think about what these mean literally or physically in terms of the actions described, the metaphorical ideas come forth immediately. So when you say the early bird catches the worm, the idea immediately is evoked that getting out in the morning and doing something early actually helps you accomplish things. When they say don't count your chickens before they're hatched, it's that don't do this because if you count your chickens before they're hatched, not all of them will hatch, and therefore you will be disappointed. So the literality, the physical description of what is being noted in these expressions immediately is evocative of the metaphorical meaning. So it isn't like here's the literal meaning, and then somehow later on we have this metaphoricity coming out of them. The literal and the metaphorical are close to one another. So understanding the literal meaning immediately evokes the metaphorical interpretations. So in this case, the argument is that the literal bodily action is tied to figurative symbolic meaning. Here's another example. This is some work on various things I've done over the years on poetry, and particularly the notion of allegory. So there's lots of kinds of poetry, like for example, this very famous piece by Robert Frost called The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in yellow wood, and sorry I cannot travel both, and being one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. And it goes on for several stanzas and ends with two roads diverged in wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. So it's just simply a poem about a guy walking through the woods and deciding what path to go on. But immediately that literal description is evocative of these kind of larger symbolic, indeed metaphorical, and indeed I would like to suggest allegorical interpretations. It's part of the literality of the poem. That's how it works. So it isn't like here's the literal meaning, and way over here is the metaphorical. The metaphorical is part of the physical bodily experience the poem is talking about. This is an interesting piece that I found in the newspaper many years ago. It's talking about a gentleman who retired as a high school teacher, 68 years old. And one of the things he did every day in his living room was he put up a tight wire, 4 feet across the ground, 12 feet long. And for an hour or so every day, he would go like this, walking back and forth with this thing. So he's just doing this bodily thing of kind of walking in a tight wire, but all sorts of metaphorical meanings arise from that physical kind of bodily experience. So he said it's all about balance. Basically, you're all walking a tight wire. And when you're on the wire, you have to be focused. So many things affect your balance. If you're tired, depressed, impetuous, unfocused, irritable, hungry, it shows up immediately on the wire. So again, this is another kind of interesting physical bodily action, physical experience that immediately is evocative of these larger metaphorical things. Journeys that we take are not just sort of physical, non-metaphorical things. Journeys are always, to some degree, metaphorical. This is Ray's truck driving experience. This is formative in my life. When I was 17 years old, I graduated from high school on another job as a truck driver for this company. I drove this big truck. And the first day, I didn't have the right license to drive this big truck. The people didn't care. They gave me this truck, and I had to drive through the streets of downtown Boston. So within 20 minutes after getting into this truck, I was going down this little street, and there was cars on both sides, and I couldn't get down the street. I go, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was like sweating. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And something came to my mind how to deal with this physical bodily thing that I was encountering. And that was, don't look to the side, step hard on the gas, and go straight ahead. And can I tell you something that in some small way, that's how I try to live my life. In a little ways. My wife Sylvia once told me, Ray, that's great, but sometimes you run over bodies along the way. So the metaphor doesn't work perfectly. But there's a sense like, look, don't worry about this on the side. Keep going straight. And literally, I stepped on the gas, and within 5 seconds, I was out in this intersection. I was free. And I immediately recognized that this physical experience wasn't just a matter of, now life is a journey, but the journey itself is kind of life. It's a representative of this metaphorical meaning. So my physical bodily experience of doing this little journey in this truck is itself very much metaphorical. So bodily experiences in this case, and many others, becomes quite quickly metaphorical. Another project that I've done several years ago is looking at allegory and political discourse. And the particular piece that I was interested in here was on political presidential TV debates in the 2016 election between Barack Obama, who was the president, and his opponent, who was Mitt Romney, a Republican. And as is the tradition, they go on TV and have a series of debates. And so the voters can see what these people have to say. And before the first debate, a commentator on television said the following: "I'll be out there to watch the two of them go at it. I have no real idea what to expect. I think Romney will take some hard shots. He may spend the whole 90 minutes blasting away at the president, serving him with one indictment after another, hoping that something will stick. I think Obama will play with him, parry the assaults, block the blows, try to keep his head clear so he can avoid getting hurt. I think he will start slow with both men trying to be cautious, neither able to land a punch, not hard enough to register with the tens of millions watching." So this is a perfect example of a well-known metaphor where, oh, here's a picture, by the way, of the two of you going at it, where basically political debates are boxing matches. Common kind of metaphor, a lot of different kinds of discourse. And I did some studies where I asked people to interpret and read and interpret that segment that I just presented to you. And people were really good at making the mappings out between what's the boxing match like, what's the political debate like. And they really didn't understand it quite deeply. But the thing that I was interested in here is that I asked people, why are political debates like boxing matches? And this is what a lot of people said, is that boxing matches are themselves political kinds of struggles. They themselves are metaphorical in their own way. So the fighters or the boxers represent different types of people, with personal backgrounds, appearance, boxing styles, ethnicity, nationality. And boxers are basically fighting for these causes. So boxing isn't just this physical bodily combating with one another person, but rather it's this kind of symbolic, indeed metaphorical kind of thing. Where boxing alone, the activity of the bodily experience of boxing alone evokes metaphorical kinds of meanings. So in this sense, I think metaphor is not just for making sense of abstract concepts, in the way that we often think is the case, but many ordinary habitual bodily actions are routinely understood in metaphorical ways. And metaphor, and perhaps to some degree allegory, arises within concrete bodily actions and experience. Metaphor just doesn't happen from the mapping onto the abstract stuff. The bodily experiences, the source domains themselves are often inherently metaphorical to some significant degree. So here's a gentle warning. I'm now going to talk about some things having to do with bodily stuff, bodily activities, bodily things. And some of the things I'm going to talk about are not necessarily the kind of topics that we necessarily have and see in polite conversation. So I don't mean to offend anybody by talking about bodily stuff, but just be warned, and here we go. Let's talk about sex. Sex is a bodily activity from what I read in books, and there's a bunch of metaphors that we use for talking about this bodily activity. So sex is playing sports, or it's a war, or it's hunting, or sex is eating, or for example, the body is dessert, sex is doing something nice, sex is fire. There's lots and lots of metaphors we have for talking about this kind of bodily experience of having sex. And let me just show you one that I happen to grow up with, and it's still predominant to some degree in American culture. And that is the idea of American baseball, where in American baseball, a batter gets up, a pitcher throws the ball, you hit the ball, you run to first base, to second base, to third base, and you score a run when you get home. So it turns out that running around the bases and getting to different places is representative of different progressions in the act of sex. So that when you get to first base, you can kiss. If you get to second base, you're doing stuff for touching the other person above the waist. You get to third base, you're touching below the waist. And when you get to home place, you score. And people talk all the time about sex like, hey, dude, I scored. And they refer to it as basically a very metaphorical way. And what's interesting, and I remember this distinctly from my whatever childhood, where people I know when I was a teenager I was in second, I was trying to be third, and then her parents came, or something like that. And they thought they would describe, they had the whole structure of this metaphor, and it wasn't just a way of talking about it, it seemed like this is how they thought of the experience of having sex. In today's culture, in the United States, there's a lot of people, feminists in particular, who try to argue against this particular metaphor, and there's lots of other alternative metaphors that are being proposed. But again, this is a good example of how sex can be itself, a bodily experience, bodily activity, can be understood metaphorically. Can you orgasm without metaphor? I have a friend in Amsterdam who says, yes, but only when the orgasms are deliberate. But, you know, so, I'm not sure you've ever thought of this particular question in your life. Some of you know, I think about it all the time. So here's the reason I ask you this is that orgasm is a very physiological kind of experience. You know, if you map onto these other domains in psychology, people's explanations of actions are often thought and described in terms of orgasms, believe it or not. But I'm asking about this because of this really wonderful paper by Jiang and Chang, published in Metaphor and Symbol a few years back, called Behold, I'm Coming Soon, a study of conceptualization of sexual orgasm in 27 languages. And they asked people in these 27 languages for terms for orgasm, as well as the announcements they used before having an orgasm in their native language. So they got all these informants to give responses to these things, and they had an incredibly complex kind of data, which I'm not going to be able to give you in full, but here's some of the things that they found. We have these metaphors for thinking about sex. For example, an orgasm, like orgasm is the destination, where the target domain is the sex, and the source domain is journey. So the participants and travelers, the progress made in sex is the distant cover, the choices over what to do during sex, the decisions about ways to go, and the orgasm is thought to be the destination of the journey. Orgasm is also conceived of as the peak of a tide. So the highest peak, the sexual peak, the point highest, the high tide. And each one of these, within different languages, is reflective of the notion that happiness is up to the extent that orgasm makes you happy. Up is good, a tide, that's the sense of bodily sense of building a wave, and then you're at the peak of it, that's a good point, because it's the highest. So there's metaphoricity in terms of our understanding of this particular bodily experience. Some languages talk about the announcement of orgasms on coming. So if the orgasm is toward some place, a particular destination, or perhaps towards the addressee. Others say I'm going, where you're going away from the destination of orgasm or going away from the addressee. But going also in some languages refers to moving towards heaven. In some languages talk about I'm ending, I'm finishing, I'm exiting, or I'm done as an announcement of orgasm. Orgasm is also the release of force or substance from a container. So I'm shooting, I'm about to shoot, I'm about to discharge. And we also have people orgasm, like now on the fire. And finally, in some languages like French, they refer to the concept of death, so the petite mort in French, which is the little death. Orgasm is a little death, where you have a kind of a loss of control, you have an altered state of consciousness, and this is why this talk is titled, An Orgasm is a Little Taste of Heaven. It's a little taste is also metaphorical, but it's a little taste of heaven. This is what it might be like. So the point here is, of course, that again, orgasm can be thought of in a variety of different ways. Cultures have an influence upon this, but it isn't just raw physiological experience. Rather, it's the experience itself that actually understood metaphorically. Masturbation, quickly. In American English, we have hundreds and hundreds of expressions for male, spank the monkey, farm the flagpole, choke the chicken, glue the tube, look at the cow, twist the crank. There's hundreds of these, but the women is pack the key, put the bean, dot the I, sweeping the carpet, stuffing the taco, polishing the spoon. I'm sure that all of you in your different languages have respective expressions like this. Again, in English, there's thousands, more than thousands of these you can count it. And the argument here is that it isn't just how we talk about these kinds of activities referring to masturbation like context, but in some cases, these metaphors and the time these wrapped around these two are how we think about, how we experience these, what we're doing when so-called people masturbate. Pain. It's interesting, all of the keynote speakers or other speakers listing are people who've done work on pain. And I want to tell you about some of the things. This Mino has some stuff in her article she published also in Metaphor and Symbol a number of years ago, where here's some of the metaphors by which we think about our experiences of pain. So pain is a sharp object, like a sharp stab of pain made her sit back down. Pain is a tormenting animal. A massive killing pain came over my right eye. I clawed at my head trying to uproot the fiendish tail hounds from their iron grip. Pain is often thought to be fire, so pain is fire that can devour the whole body. We also have the metaphor physical damage can be occurred via certain things like the assertion of pointed objects, like stinging, prickling, boring, drilling, penetrating. We use those terms to refer to our experiences of pain. Physical damage can be done via the application of sharp objects, such as sharp, cutting, lacerating, stabbing, piercing, pulling and tearing, tugging, pulling, wrenching, squeezing, and tearing. And then also physical damage can be done via the application of pressure in ways such as pinching, pressing, crushing, and tightening. And so all of these very complex ways that we talk about pain suggest to us that pain isn't just this kind of physical sensation we have, but rather we always very immediately conceptualize it in often metaphorical kinds of ways. And here's another example from Ella's paper. A long-term chronic pain patient said, I am constantly battling the physical pain you could possibly describe as sores on fire. It is as if they are ripping out my leg all the time. Red hot sores, they move, they start in my back and move down relentlessly like an escalator. I think it's probably one rod in a million sores. So this is very detailed, metaphorical understanding of what that bodily experience is like. You see that very frequently in terms of our understanding and perhaps experiences of things like pain. Menstruation, there's a lot of work on menstruation and metaphor. Let me just give you a couple of examples of some informants that we talked about what their experience is like. So menstruation is like the crotch is throwing up 24/7 for a week every month. Or pretend someone filled up a large water balloon inside your pelvis about 2 inches below your navel that slowly leaks its fluid with the end still tied over a 5-day span. So it's not just this thing that happens to you, but it has all these metaphorical nuances to it. Nursing, I love the nursing stuff. So here's the deal about nursing. So you try to nurse an infant, is that a metaphorical experience? I mean, it's a physical thing you're doing, interacting with another person. And here's an account, I just want to give you one example, an account from a woman who said there was no metaphor that captures the many phases I went through as a first-time nursing mom. So she broke it down to the different phases of nursing and the different metaphors that apply to these different phases of this particular mom experience. So for the first 3 days, she said they were like puberty. I was massively sweaty and my shirt was way too tight. My breast felt suddenly powerful and completely overwhelming. I cried all the time. That seems, like puberty in terms of another kind of bodily experience. 4 days, 4, 6 was like assembling a bookshelf from IKEA. I knew if I could just get the dang positioning right, it would all come together. I looked at a diagram after diagram, and it appeared so easy in the pictures, but each new attempt left me bruised, demoralized, and frustrated. I'm going to stop here. I've never had an experience of nursing a child, but I've had many experiences of trying to put together an IKEA thing, and I hate it. I want to throw the thing out. It's frustrating. I want to sue IKEA. I just can't stand it. So when I read this metaphor, I don't know what it's all. It could be on day 4 to 6 nursing because of this particular kind of metaphor. Days 7 through 18 were like S&M, sadism and masochism. The pain was so bad I didn't want to puke, but I went back for more every 2 hours. Many people told me that my experience did not sound normal. They speculated perhaps there was something very wrong with what I was doing. They suggested I seek professional help. That's a different stage, a different metaphorical thing. And the idea that you're going back to this thing that was painful was sort of like S&M. And then days 19 through 50 were like learning the guitar chords to your very favorite song. And the woman said, it was hard. There were blisters, but they weren't too bad. Certainly nothing that would stop me. Every day it got easier. Eventually the blisters were gone. My hands grew to the ease. I just knew what to do. I could finally experience it like a song. I felt so proud. I felt like telling everyone, do you see this? Check me out. I'm going to do this everywhere. I'm going to do this right in your face. I'm a total rock star. All of a sudden now I want to nurse, you know, but this is perfect. Description describe this one thing. It's different. It's different at different times, different metaphors that apply. And then finally, from 51 days to 2 years, she goes, it was like having an amazing conversation. Like the kind of chat that leaves you knowing everything about someone. The kind that ends with you staring into someone's eyes and feeling like the entire world is being held somewhere in between your gaze. 2 years to 2 years, 4 months were like the last 200 pages of a very good book. I slowed down, I paid very close attention. I did not want it to end. I was not sure what would happen after I finished. I sensed that I would feel a little bit empty. Another, again, beautiful, poetic description of what this kind of physiological, bodily interaction with another human being. And then finally, her child, around 2 years and so forth, said to her one day, "Mommy, your boob's not working anymore." And the mother said, "The other night was like saying goodbye to a very close friend you suddenly had to leave." And she stopped. So here again, there's this complex thing about bodily experience and nursing, but it has all these metaphorical textures inflated at different times in different ways. It isn't just a bodily thing that happens on its own. It is something that really invokes metaphorical, symbolic kinds of meanings for lots of people. A lot of places, a lot of people are very interested in bodily metaphors. There's the world of psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic theory. And of course, there's Freud's famous psychosexual stage theory development, where we go through an oral stage, and then we go through an anal stage, and then we go through a genital stage. And the point is that each one of these are not just kind of like bodily things the child is doing, but rather they have symbolic meanings, they have metaphoricity attached to them, very much so. So Freud and many others, of course, over the years talk about each one of these stages has a focus which is related to the working out of different psychic or emotional conflicts, and metaphoricity comes in very, very quickly in each one of these things, even so the claim is for very unconscious children. The psychoanalytic literature looks at lots of detailed bodily kinds of experiences and tries to interpret them, see what possible symbolic, indeed metaphorical meanings they may have. And the one that I kind of interested in is stomach noises, like when your stomach rumbles, or gurgles, or growls. That's just the kind of thing that happens with your body. Is that metaphorical? Right? Well, it turns out that a lot of people have been thinking about this, particularly in the context of face-to-face therapy, where clients is working with a patient and someone's stomach growls. What does that mean? They think it means something. A lot of people in the psychoanalytic literature think that stomach growling is a sign of the stomach's wisdom, or it's evidence of psychic kinds of processing, or it's the voice of your brain. And indeed, one patient talked about her stomach growl is my bullshit detector. So when her therapist says something to her, her stomach growls, she goes, "What you're saying to me is bullshit." Let's say she doesn't think it's worth very much. And indeed, another a therapist talked about his patient's stomach growling as evidence of her hunger for her mother who recently passed away. So here, again, very primal bodily experience of having your stomach rumble can have all sorts of possible metaphorical meanings to some people in some kinds of contexts. Dying. We'll end with dying. Dying is a bodily experience in various ways. We are all in the process of dying. Sorry to say, or happy to say. And I'm interested particularly in near-death experiences. I taught a course for decades at my university on consciousness. And one of the kinds of consciousness that you experience when you're having the near-death kinds of experiences, and people report very interesting and very systematic kinds of things when they have these near-death experiences. They come close to dying and then they come back. And the journey metaphors are prevalent in these kinds of discussions of things they say. So people describe near-death as moving through darkness, it's moving through a tunnel, a cave, a cylinder, a building, a valley. And as you're going through this journey, you're often communicating with people who are your guides, often people who are former loved ones who have passed away and they're there to guide you. And the most interesting people often refer to this journey that they're having as having a panoramic vision of your own life in a quick glance, a quick nutshell. So dying is something that happens to your body. There's lots of physical, medical texts that talk about what happens when your body dies. But that experience, that physical thing is happening infused with metaphor along the way. So this is very systematic in terms of this approach to people that have near-death experiences. So, finally, the thing on remote mention is that there's a lot of stuff when we really is talking about some of this to some degree yesterday, where people do metaphor therapy for patients who have problems with menstruation pain, osteoporosis, eating disorders, erectile dysfunction. And all of these therapies are devoted to trying to get people to understand these physical experiences using a metaphor that they can live with, that can kind of, sort of modify or ameliorate the kinds of pain they experience with some of these things. And there's plenty of studies that show that these metaphorical kinds of therapies are very effective in treating all of these and many other kinds of disorders. So the clinical community is very much in tune with thinking about different aspects of bodily experience and dealing with those, particularly when they bring discomfort and pain, via metaphor, which I think is another kind of evidence for the notion that many kinds of bodily experiences are inherent in metaphorical. So here's some skeptical responses to some things I've been saying so far. Well, some people will say, well, bodily experience is different from our conceptualizations of bodily experience. So I have pain, but then I conceptualize of that pain. Or I have orgasm, and that's different in some respects from our conceptualization of orgasm, both during the experience and after the experience of orgasm. So they think conceptualization is something that happens later on, and perhaps happens not obligatory, but sort of a selected, in selected times. I want to suggest here that, and this is a very crude response to this skepticism, but in my own world of psychology, we used to have these separations between the studies of sensation, the studies of perception, and the studies of conceptualization, or cognition. And these were seen as very different kinds of things. But over the last 40 or 50 years, you see a complete blending together of these kinds of things. So that sensation, there is no such thing as raw sensation unto its own, apart from perception and apart from conceptualization. I don't think it's possible to just say, here's pain, or here's orgasm, all unto itself in its own modular way that has nothing to do with the other conceptualization issues. I think conceptualization influences these things from the get-go. And that's one kind of response to this skeptical kind of reply to my argument. Another skeptical response that one could perhaps offer to this argument is that, well, we use metaphor to talk about bodily experiences, such as all the euphemisms we have for sex and masturbation, but bodily experience itself is not understood in terms of metaphor. And this is a very familiar kind of response to a lot of things people do in the world against conceptual metaphor theory, for example. So people in anthropology want to argue that, well, our experiences, when we know of things, are completely non-metaphorical. And the fact that we have metaphors for talking about things are just nothing but talk. The experiences, the knowledge, the things themselves are metaphorical. And I think this is very problematic, partly because given all of the incredible evidence we know about things that you all do in the metaphor world, showing that conceptualizations are very systematic, the kinds of inferences that we make, the kinds of decisions we make based on these kind of metaphorical conceptualizations of things like sex and masturbation and so forth. The conceptualizations are coming in right away. It isn't just a matter of talk. It's in fact a matter of conceptualizations from the get-go. And the work in multimodal metaphor, the work that I and others have done in psycholinguistics suggests that metaphor is actually part of how we think about these things, and not just a matter of how we talk. So that's one kind of response to this kind of skeptical reaction to the argument that I'm making. So empirical methods. So how do you test this hypothesis? The hypothesis is metaphor is part of all experience. Now, that's a very broad kind of argument of statement to make. And my argument here really is that I'm not suggesting that it's part of every moment of your bodily experience, but it's of a significant part of those experiences. Similarly to the book I published last year in metaphor work, made the argument that we want to say, how does conceptual metaphor come into being in our experience of abstract concepts? It isn't necessarily the case that conceptual metaphor is there every moment in every instance, but it's there as a significant constraint. So I just want to say the argument for this hypothesis that metaphor is a significant constraint in many aspects of bodily experience. And I want to note that metaphors particularly arise in bodily experiences when we have complications are encountered. So whenever something's not going completely right, That's where the metaphor comes in. That's where the symbolization comes in. So this is where I think the hypothesis was most likely to be found evidence for it. So what are some of these kinds of methods? Let me just go quickly through some of these. Well, there's a linguistic stuff. That is to say, people talk about their bodies and bodily experiences in complex metaphorical ways. And all of the work that many of you have done, in particular, I want to note the work in fields like cultural anthropology and medical anthropology, but all of these cultures, there's lots of systematicity in ways that people are metaphorically talking about their experiences. And again, it isn't just kind of loose talk, there's a real systematicity in all of it, and people are doing problem solving and making decisions about their bodily experiences entirely based on these kinds of metaphors. So I think there's a lot of evidence out there that can be mined from these different fields to support the hypothesis. And even scientific language describing the bodily experiences like metaphor. There's tons of things out there in contemporary work of analysis of scientific language. These are full of metaphors. And here's one example. I was working on this project the last few years on Middle English lyric poetry with a group of people who are all from the humanities and all medievalists. And they brought me in to give them some thoughts about metaphor and embodiment. And I did this one analysis of a poem by Geoffrey Chaucer, which is a complex poem. And in that poem, he talked about pain in several places, P-E-Y-N. And these ways that he talked about pain were metaphorical, indeed poetic in some ways. And all of the literary scholars have seen this is an instance of Chaucer's genius as a poet to come up with these novel kinds of metaphors. And just so coincidentally, I happened to come across some work in the history of medicine where people were looking at medical texts from the Middle Ages times, both in England and in France, where people were talking about describing pain in these medical texts. They're all completely nothing but metaphorical systems. Here's this metaphorical system of pain, here's another one, here's another one. So what Chaucer was doing, he wasn't coming up with something completely new. He was coming up with a sort of creative instantiation of something that was out there, even in the scientific literature. So I don't think it's the case that we have all these metaphors just because we have our folk knowledge, and then there's the real scientific understanding. The scientific understandings of the body and all experiences are also very metaphorical. Linguistic relativity, this is something which I've always been interested in why cognitive linguists haven't made more about this. And this is also something that we talked about yesterday. And the argument here is that we have metaphors come into being from our bodily experiences, we map these onto these abstract domains, we're thinking about things metaphorically. But there's still not enough emphasis looking at the fact that the metaphors we encounter about the body in our everyday life, as well as with bodily actions, can actually shape our meaningful experiences of the body. When you learn a new language, you actually learn some new metaphors, and I think that can have an influence upon aspects of what your bodily experience is like. So the language, the gestures, things you see symbolically represented out in the world about bodily experiences, they have an influence on how we think about our bodily experiences. Psychological experiments have also been done, which I think provide evidence to support this, having to do primarily with primary metaphors, so that our sensory experience of source domains alone facilitates our thinking of encounters with target domains in metaphorical kinds of ways. So, for example, happy is up. If you put a person in a physical position of being up, it turns out that it makes them a little bit more happy than if they're actually down. If you have a person holding a warm cup of coffee for a few minutes, and then you give them a questionnaire about a person, a fictitious person, you have to make ratings about that person, you will tend to judge that person as being more affectionate than if you first give them a cold cup of coffee. So the physical experience of the source domain alone is evocative of the entire kind of primary metaphor. Importance is weighing. If you ask a person to judge, again, something about a fictional character in a piece of paper that they read, and you give them this piece of paper on a heavy clipboard, they'll judge that person to be more important than if you give them that same description on a light clipboard. So the physical experience of weight or heaviness makes you think of the thing as possibly being more important. Similarity is closeness. So you bring things that are closer together and you ask people to make judgments of how similar they are. They actually see them as being more similar when they're closer together than they're further apart, physically. Same with categories or containers. You ask people to make judgments about whether two things are members of the same category. If you put them in a little square, they'll tend to see those things as being part of the same category, or that they're not similar kinds of squares. So there's tons and dozens of experiments, primarily in the area of social psychology, which shows that having people just experience their bodily source domains here immediately is evocative of these metaphorical kinds of thinking. So I think this is a significant source of evidence for the hypothesis. Here's another work that's relevant. Thinking outside the box is a term that we use in English to try and make someone creative. So thinking outside the box as you're trying to solve this problem. Well, it turns out that if you actually take a person and you sit them outside of a box, and then you have that person solve some problems, they actually do better at solving the problems, and they're more creative in the ways they solve the problems than if you have that person first sitting inside of a box. So just physical experience of sitting outside the box is evocative of this kind of metaphor. Similarly, creativity is thought to be a kind of nonlinear activity. So if you ask people, first of all, to sort of walk randomly around the room for a few minutes, compared to have them walking around the rectangular diagram on the floor, the people who walk randomly are subsequently much better at solving various kinds of tasks, having to do also with intergroup relations. They see they're much more flexible in their thinking when they walk around randomly than they do this pretty thing. So the physical experience of how you walk makes a difference in terms of how you think. And this is work that Pat Sunderman and I have done, where, for example, in the world of humor, we have these expressions, pull your leg or yank your chain, to talk about how I'm just teasing you. But if you have someone literally pull a leg or yank a chain, as opposed to twist a leg or lift a chain, it actually enhances your subsequent ability to be humorous, particularly creating captions for different kinds of cartoons. So just having these kinds of very simple bodily experiences related to our metaphorical understanding is evocative of these entire kinds of metaphors for these bodily things. So this, I think, is another kind of thing that experimental psychology tells us. Now, I'm not going to spend much time talking about the neuroscience kind of evidence, but the idea here is that there are diverse interactive connections between different sensory brain areas within the somatosensory cortex and between sensory neural systems within areas associated with higher cognition. So it isn't just like the stuff in which the parts of the brain that do bodily sensations feed forward upward to other parts of the brain, but rather stuff in the other parts of the brain feed downward and influence what's going on in some of the sensory cortex, or these sensory areas. And so this is an area I think one can mine to give evidence for this hypothesis as well. So what are the implications of all this metaphor theory? Suppose this theory, this hypothesis is correct. Let's just pretend it's correct. Typically, for example, in conceptual metaphor theory, we think of metaphors arising from the mapping of information from non-metaphorical embodied source domains onto and creating more abstract target domains. So, we understand life by mapping on the image schematic structure of the journeys that help us better structure and understand life. And this is why, as conceptual metaphor theory says, the mind is embodied, it's metaphorical, and that's great. That's obviously a major kind of influence. But I think there's something problematic with this, in that it hides an implicit mind-body dualism. Thus, the mind is metaphorical and embodied, but the body is not thought to be metaphorical. Right? But, as the argument here goes, many bodily source domains are themselves, to significant degrees at different times, themselves understood and conceptualized via a kind of metaphor. So what does that mean? It suggests, first of all, that we think about how prominent metaphor is in our life. Metaphor may be even more prominent and pervasive in our life than we traditionally thought. It isn't just these abstract source target domains that we also call live by. Our bodily experiences, the source domains themselves are metaphorical. Metaphor will be more pervasive than we previously thought. And again, so in this case, perhaps metaphor does not actually arise from projections of non-metaphorical source domains or target domains, but metaphorical embodied source domains may metonymically relate to abstract target domains. There may be much more of a hard-pull relationship between the source domains and this larger conceptual kinds of metaphor, rather than the source domains being non-metaphorical mapped onto the metaphorical target domains. So take, for example, my truck driving experience. I want to suggest that that itself alone instantiates the life as a journey metaphor. and is a concrete representation of that concept. We don't just take the truck driving stuff and use that to make sense of life, but the experience itself is metaphorically understood. And in this way, there must be different kinds of source and target domain relations that is presently assumed by conceptual metaphor theories and most other theories of metaphor. And so in one sense, it might be that the relationship between the so-called sources and targets may much be a matter of tension or resonance rather than mapping. This is something which I hope to explore more in the future. So it may not be exactly the way we traditionally thought. In the end, I want to leave you with the metaphorical bodily imperative. And this is simply, as you go about doing your work on metaphor, you explore different kinds of source domains. Don't assume that they're not metaphorical. Always look out and be open to the possibility that bodily experiences are themselves significantly constituted by metaphor. That's a research imperative that we should all embrace. And in doing so, I think we will become more aware of and start thinking theoretically about how to incorporate the notion of bodily experiences are metaphorical into our theoretical description of how metaphor works. My final piece of advice is this. You're all lovely people. You all have beautiful bodies. Take care of them, appreciate them. Sometimes things are good with your body, sometimes things are bad, but there's always a lot of really wonderful metaphorical stuff going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond, for a very arousing talk this morning. So you have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead, please. Catherine?
Thank you. Ray, I really like the fact that you used a metaphor, proposed metaphors at the end of your talk, because we think about mappings from source to target domain. So you're suggesting that we use different metaphors, such as the notion of tension or resonance, to explore what's underlying, especially bodily-based metaphors. I think this is an excellent way of approaching the situation. From the examples you gave, they were novel metaphors related to particular problems that people were facing with their body. And so I'm wondering what you think about the idea that if possibly, we use metaphors for different reasons. So sometimes metaphors are very conventional. We don't even understand, we don't recognize that we're not trying to actively use them. Mapping may be useful there, or the notion of mapping, but when we're talking about novel metaphors, the notion of tension or resonance may be more useful. I've been thinking about this a lot, because of blended theory and all these different theories. It's because we're trying to solve different problems with these different theories.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's indeed a possibility. However, I would probably take a little bit of issue with the idea that the conventional ones, the conventional source domains and conventional metaphors are not necessarily metaphorical. So I think, life as a journey is very conventional metaphor. But I think the journeys themselves are often conceived in the moment, but in metaphorical kinds of ways. I think all the primary metaphors that I gave an example of, which are pretty pervasive, perhaps even to a certain degree across cultures, a lot of those source domains themselves had metaphoricity very closely attached to them. And I've been going through, and I didn't present this today, trying to go through like a large index of so-called conventional metaphors from these master metaphor lists and trying to look at how, balance and many other kinds of these source domains of these conventional metaphors are often inherently in some way, sometimes thought to be metaphorical. So I think you're right that in some cases where a person is facing a dilemma, facing a problem, that adaptive issue that has to be solved, more of these kinds of embodied source domain metaphors may come in. But I also think that it happens more conventional all the time. And we're constantly reifying that through our bodily experience. I just, maybe because I'm a metaphor freak, but I'm often doing these little journeys in life and go, oh my God, that was what my life is like. These little tiny things where something goes wrong, or I forgot something, or I'm walking from the parking lot to my office and I drop something, and oh God, this is what my life is like. It's always complicated, messy, and I screw things up. And this happens all the time. So I think we're experiencing our very mundane kinds of bodily things quite frequently in terms of metaphor. And I think, again, when things go wrong, in even small ways than the conventional kinds of experience, I think metaphor comes in.
So,
Hey, Ray. This is wonderful. As you know, I'm doing some similar things like you presented here. And I'm wondering if you also noticed some kind of historical development here. Could it be the case that first we understand everything metaphorically, including all physical objects, actions, and so on and so forth, especially in the past 100,000 years when we were going through the experiences of understanding our own world, and we had no idea how things work. So my very crude kind of idea about this is that historically, even a blade of grass can be understood metaphorically, but then we can understand something else which is more abstract than a blade of grass in terms of a blade of grass. So I see some kind of a historical development in all this. So that's one thing. The other is that it seems to me that this is a curious phenomenon to us who have been brought up on conceptual metaphor theory, because for thousands of years, people were actually thinking in terms of the first kind of metaphor, where even the physical things needed to be explained in metaphorical terms. And that was, mythologies are all about that. Fables are about that. Children's literature is all about that, and so on and so forth. So what happened, and I'm wondering, and I would, hate to admit this, conceptual metaphor theory changed something in this sequence, and Lakoff and Johnson explicitly said, okay, there are many other metaphors, but this is what we find most interesting.
Right.
And they began to focus our thinking as a community on these issues, and we left behind or forgot completely about all the other things.
Yes.
These are the two comments that.
Sure. Let me try to answer both of them together in one sense. And I think you're making a very important point that I think we also miss. That's that we don't pay attention enough to the evolution and historical development and antecedents for why we think metaphorically in the ways that we do. So one argument that one can make about this hypothesis is that, well, look, we do a mapping from source domains onto target domains. We do look at take aspects of our experiences of journeys which are not metaphorical, and we map those onto life, and we come up with this metaphor of life as a journey. And then once we have that conceptual metaphor, we can then turn around and start thinking about the source domain in more metaphorical ways. So that's a possible evolutionary historical way that could have developed, rather the idea that metaphorical experience is part of our experience to develop. So the conceptual metaphors may actually help us understand the bodily stuff, not just that they arose in sort of companion one another. So I think this kind of historical evidence may be very relevant to thinking about some of these issues. So I'm thinking, for example, of E. Sweeter's work on seeing how that developed over time in various Indo-European languages. So I want to look at that, to answer that exact question. But just again, more generally, I think you're correct that because of the way the conceptual metaphor theory was first articulated, it did sort of presented a lens for us to think about what metaphor is all about. And I think that's been incredibly informative and valuable and wonderful, but at the same time, it misses a lot of stuff. And so I think part of what I'm trying to do here in some respects is opening that up.
We have time for one last question, but maybe Herb, would you like to wrap it up?
Thank you for this fascinating talk. I really enjoyed it. I always like the idea of embodied cognition and we understand abstract concepts through concrete concepts. But when I dig deeper into this topic, PhDs, and especially the research on abstract concepts, I begin to think, to what extent is this embodiment hypothesis true? Because to what extent is abstract concepts similar to concrete concepts is grounded in our motor experiences, in our bodily experiences? Because there's a bunch of empirical evidence from behavioral experiments and also neuroimaging.
For what experiments?
It's just psychological, behavioral experiments and also neuroimaging studies support this hypothesis that when you process abstract concepts, you do have a simulation of concrete things. But there's a bunch of other research even find this activation of concrete simulation, concrete mental simulation. I would just want to hear something. Maybe you can make a comment of how would you respond to those mixed empirical evidence.
Sure.
And another short questions also, like cognitive scientists such as Barcelona also claim that we have embodiment cognition, but it's not necessarily through medical concept.
Yes.
It can be situated action and
Yes.
cognitive cognition.
Yes.
And can you make a comment
Sure.
on this?
Well, first of all, I've always been an incredible fan of, and indeed, I think I've significantly contributed to the idea that our abstract concepts are understood through bodily source domains. And in fact, these abstract concepts are very concrete in some regard because they're informed by bodily source domains. And there's lots of psycholinguistic evidence, there's evidence from many fields, I think, supporting that. So I'm right on with that completely. But yes, there are people who, like for example, Barstow, who believes in perceptual simulations, but he doesn't think the metaphor is necessarily goes down all the way. He thinks metaphor is still, in the old-fashioned sense, a tool that we use to touch upon certain kinds of perceptual simulations. But this is metaphor coming down and structuring those simulations in the way that I and others believe. I hate doing this. But I wrote this book called Metaphor Wars about these various kinds of arguments where people, what are all the people who hate this stuff? All the people who hate conceptual metaphor theory. The people who hate embodiment. And there's a number of them out there in various fields. I try to address those concerns, not completely, but I try to say, look, this is what they're saying, why it's sometimes wrong, as I think, for example, in the case of Larry Barstow stuff, and in some cases why it's very useful and it provides kind of limitations or constraints on what the theory of conceptual metaphor. So I don't think it's going to be one person or one side is going to be winner take all. Ultimately, the ways that we think of what's a conceptual metaphor theory are going to be kind of nuanced and in particular. So it isn't the case that every abstract concept is always embodied and always metaphorical, but embodied metaphor is a significant constraint on experience. And I think that's the argument to defend rather than all versus none.
Right, thank you very much. Great. In the interest of time, we will have to cut this short, but I'm sure we can continue the discussion during the coffee break that's coming up. But let's give another round of applause. So right now, we have a good photo-taking session, so I'm going to hand over to the photographers who can organize that appropriately for the photograph.
Thank you. And while we're doing that,